The thing is that chimp brain fears various things. And it's not easy, but you can take the environment out of the equation and look at humans and go look at things that we're all scared of, all right? Because if we look across cultures and find things that we are all scared of or all wary of, you can start to think, well, maybe it's not the environment that's responsible. Maybe it's a bit like an evolutionary program that's running in the background. I don't understand it. So my daughter, 5 years old, is terrified of the dark, has to sleep with the nightlight on. Now, from my perspective, this makes no sense. She lives in a house with doors, okay? From her perspective, that logic is kind of meaningless. It's absolutely irrelevant. The reason she's scared of the dark is this is like an evolutionary program that is running in her brain. And basically where it comes from is the chimp children that avoided the dark didn't get eaten by the predators. They survived. 3.5 billion years of evolution compounds that over and over again. So we have an inbuilt program running that tells children to be fearful of the dark because you can't use your eyes. You can't see things, so you don't have an advantage. All right? That's an example of evolutionary program. I use this one. Some of you will look at that and feel physically uncomfortable. Always when I ask people how many of you are scared of snakes and spiders, you always get a sort of group of like tough guys like, no, not scared of snakes or spiders at all. It's like, okay, right, let's change the question. If I had a bucket of tomatoes here on this stage and I chucked them all over you, you'd probably look at me and go, that was weird. All right, understandably. If I had a bucket of spiders, harmless little spiders here, and chuck them all over the front row, I'd probably get quite a different reaction. All right? And the reason being is because this chimp part of our brain is scared of them. Now, logically, that makes no sense, okay? But humans aren't logical. And this thinking that we are is utterly flawed. It doesn't work, okay? It absolutely doesn't work. In a lot of organizations I work with, they're like, well, the way you get performance out of people is you pay them lots of money, and then they perform. It's like, okay, if that was a rule, all right, the football club with the highest wage bill would consistently win the league. So how did Leicester do it? Why Liverpool top? Okay? It doesn't explain the rule. Pay someone £250,000 a week to do a job. Yeah, it's certainly not going to hinder them, but it's not going to unlock levels of performance. It's much, much deeper than that. It's flawed thinking, okay? This is also why we're scared of heights. And you can do this test with a young child if you have the equipment. So, not that I recommend you do it. So basically, if you were to take sort of two platforms and put kind of like a glass bridge over it, when a baby's quite young and first able to crawl, okay, and its mother's on the other side and some food and something it wants, the baby will crawl across the glass bridge, okay? It will get from one side to the other because it hasn't learned about this, right? I was in one of those children's soft play hellholes in Swindon over Christmas, and I realized that my son had had this evolutionary program switched on when we were walking through one of these sweaty, foam-infested places, and there was a perspex screen on the floor, and he stopped, and all the other kids were running past him, and he wouldn't step on it. He didn't understand. He didn't understand the concept of that. He hadn't built a mental model around the fact that he can tread on that. So it was fear that was stopping him from doing it. Now that's his chimp brain dictating the show. Makes complete sense. Because at some point, you want to be scared of heights. Makes real sense. Because again, chimps that didn't fell out of the tree. And that was bad. Now this creates problems in the modern world, okay? So human evolution is extremely slow. It takes a long, long time. So if I was to turn that, so it's basically really, really quickly. If you take the story of humanity from the origin of life to where we are now, it's a 3.5 billion year story, okay? That's a long time. The trouble with 3.5 billion is that it's very difficult to comprehend that number because we don't work up in that spectrum very often. So if we turn it into something that we do know, all right? If this was a book, 350,000 pages, that book would be roughly the height of a 40-story building, which is the height of the walkie-talkie in London, okay? That's a big story. Humans only turn up in the last 20 pages. And if you think about the last 100 years and all the changes that the world has been through, that's the last paragraph of the last page. So we are really not very well designed for the world that we've created, and it causes us real problems. And this is one of the underlying reasons why we've got an obesity problem, okay? Because we know what we're meant to eat, probably something broadly around the sort of paleo diet. You know, you often hear about that, you know, plenty of fresh meat, vegetables, fruit, meat, all that kind of stuff, okay? And we know that that's good for us, but we want this stuff, all right? It's not the most appealing meal, but we do. And the reason we want that is because that chimp part of your brain says to you, you don't know when you're going to eat again. You better eat as much as possible. So get that on board and put on weight. And the reason it's done that is because it's learnt over its 3.5 billion years of evolution that when there's food available, you eat as much as possible, okay? Because you want to put on weight and you want to be able to survive through the periods where there isn't availability of food. So the ones that put on weight survived. The ones that didn't died out. Compound that over 3.5 billion years, over that 40 building height story. And that's why we behave in this way. So going to the gym isn't enough. If you want to lose weight, you've got to understand how you're designed and think beyond that. That's why people are terrified of public speaking. It's the most common fear. It's the reason there's lots and lots of eyes on you, okay? Again, from an evolutionary perspective, that's pretty terrifying because it means you're about to get eaten. And last way, it's one of the reasons that people don't like to change, because change brings uncertainty, and uncertainty brings risk, and that scares the chimp. That makes him uncomfortable. So people will keep doing what they've always done, especially if it's brought them success. Especially if it's brought them success. Because it's like, well, I've always done it this way.